Zero. This is part of the Down in Flames series. I don't have Corsairs and Hellcats, which was the expansion to this, which I don't think was a full box game. I think it was just an expansion, unlike 8th Air Force, which was a fully boxed version that gave campaigns. So this is going to be as close to an unboxing as you get with me, like a traditional unboxing, because I don't want to play through a bunch of dogfights, certainly. The game system is very close to what you see in Wild Blue Yonder. Wild Blue Yonder is really, you know, the development of the system beyond this, and has some improvements in the fighter, or some changes that I think add something to it in the actual dogfighting side of things, and then largely copies the same format as the campaign for the campaigns. But we're going to actually focus on that because I found the campaigns in Wild Blue Yonder to be very, very poorly developed. No idea how they work in terms of you know, balance and whatnot. I assume that was worked out. The land campaign I did felt relatively balanced. I wasn't able to get to the others because of rules issues, to be honest. Rules issues which do not persist in this one. Interestingly enough, this earlier version, the rules are better. They added stuff in the later game. But anyway, let's take a look at some of the components. First of all, the counters. Hey, I haven't even looked at them. They look kind of thin. GMT had thinner counters at that time, but you know, they're serviceable, right? It has a concept here for the pilots of unskilled pilots. I kind of remembered this. When you get a pilot, you flip it up in the air and it comes down, and if it's a skilled pilot, you get to keep it. If it's unskilled, you don't. It's like the randomizer instead of the way things worked in the campaigns in Wild Blue Yonder, where they like assign you specific pilots for specific missions. Now, sometimes that happens here. The cards. Okay, they're not the best that are out there, but they're reasonable playing card quality cards, and they're not those stupid armored cards that came out in Wild Blue Yonder. Now, you only have a single deck, and I know people have their disagreements with that, and you can't use these for Wild Blue Yonder without losing part of the game, because there are some new cards that have been added into the system since its early days. But, man, the quality of the cards has declined by putting those fucking armored ones. I'm not sure that these will hold up all that well. They're a little flimsy, but again, they're better than anything that was coming out before this in games. You know, like if you look at your up front and stuff like that, tear them out of a sheet. These will probably wear almost as fast as the armored ones will, but they're shuffleable. No pain at all at shuffling it. You can also see it's a smaller deck. They're a little thinner, which helps manage the deck as well and keep the size a little low. The planes themselves, who cares? You know, they've got all the information they need. They're on that same quality card stock, and it really doesn't matter if they get marked up a little bit. All right, the campaign game resources is a relatively minor fold-out. Consider how much information was on the Wild Blue Yonder one. This just basically tells you what, it gives you the details that you're going to get off of the various campaign cards. Then, if we look at the campaign logs, we see something. There's no rules on these campaign logs. Wild Blue Yonder hid some of the campaign rules on the logs, the sheets of paper that you record shit on. Instead, all the information you need is on the campaign card itself. And it gives you a fairly understandable description of what you do in each of these campaigns. There may be additional information. These aren't campaigns, these are the targets. And you can see the targets are, you know, not full color and whatnot, but the quality is good enough. The mission display, whatever. Works the same between the two games. Again, a little bit lower frill value, you know, less color and whatnot. I actually prefer these campaign logs with sheets of paper on them instead of the heavier stock. Like, I'd rather have a few sheets of paper of the various campaigns. Now, these are much smaller because they don't include any rules. And they give you a few, and, you know, you can copy additional ones just like you could copy off those hard stock ones. But I would much rather have a couple more of these. It lets you play right away. You don't feel bad about marking up some stock thing that, you know, even if you do have extras in Wild Blue Yonder. Okay. The base game rulebook, you know, the basic game was well handled in Wild Blue Yonder. The print here is a little smaller. There are a few little differences. Mainly there's a couple new cards in the game. Trying to remember what else might have changed. There might be some differences in terms of altitude effects or something minor like that. But, you know, the basic dueling game is relatively easy to learn in any edition of this game, and is not problematic. But here, the campaign book. So, what do we get here? Well, there's a few things that seem to be missing. So, for example, that you would really expect. Oh no, dive bombing is here. Yeah, okay. I thought they left dive bombing out, and I'm like, well, that's problematic. They've changed, or the earlier editions had an ingress and egress turn. The way those are explained in here is easier to comprehend than the way that Wild Blue Yonder explains the single turnover target rolls. The effect is essentially the same. It's just, you know, it's kind of confusing the way they do it in Wild Blue Yonder. And again, that game just did not receive the development time. Well, it received the time. It didn't receive the effort it needed. I mean, it was in development for like 10 years, at least. And what came out feels like kind of a slipshod product in the end. And I don't know who we're gonna put the finger on here. So here we have a couple of developers and Versen as designer. There were a couple of developers for Wild Blue Yonder as well. It feels to me like not as much effort was put in terms of making it as accessible. Now, of course, I've read and kind of get the Wild Blue Yonder rules, even though I have had troubles and gave up playing the campaign, the Stalingrad Airlift campaign, because of one problem to begin with. But there were actually multiple problems. One of the problems that was in Wild Blue Yonder was that these cards for the various campaigns did not cover all the information you needed. They ported some of the information into here. Instead here, well, we'll talk about it in a little bit when we get to those. But we've got a set of rules for land campaigns, pretty much the same as in Wild Blue Yonder. Resources, on the other hand, well, they're all going to be over here on this card. And there's a general rule for what you're going to get and how you operate the resources in the different types of campaigns. Here's the thing. This is what finally blew my gasket, and I gave up on it. So resources are in the land campaign. Resources are covered in the naval campaign, and then there's the Pearl Harbor, which is a special solo game. And no, I'm not going to do the solo game. But yeah, I mean, there are rules for how to cope with these resources specific to the different types of campaigns they had. Now, in Wild Blue Yonder, they have different campaigns, right? They have the land campaign, the progressive campaign, and then I'm trying to remember, there was one more. There were 3 different types, and none of them were naval. This has special rules for the carrier campaigns, right? But what's notably different here is that they actually put the rules where they belonged, right? In Wild Blue Yonder, they put the rules for resources under land campaign and ended up not copying them everywhere else. Now, they could have boiled them out. There was a section for campaigns in general. They could have moved them there. That was, again, a misdevelopment opportunity if that rule was supposed to apply to all things. It is. It wasn't clear to me, and I had just, I gave up, and then I had like a power outage for a week, so in between, and I'm just like, yeah, I can't come back for this. The actuality of the campaigns, it's going to be the same kind of thing in terms of the play. Look, the campaigns give you a resource management system to try to decide what you're going to hit with, what you're going to apply to any particular given thing. And now here, you've got special carrier fleet tactics and flight ops for the turn and stuff like that. So you're going to be actually handling some of, at least on an abstract level, some of the naval options that are going to be handled during the campaign. How well do they work? I don't know. Again, I'm just not in the mood because I know what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to me flying a bunch of missions and trying to play out this card game solo. The reason I'm doing this is I'm wired on coffee and can't figure out what to do. I tried looking at the rules of Beowulf and Airship City up there, and something else, Air Empire up there. In each case, Air Empire I looked at, it's a bidding game. I didn't feel like trying to do a game that relies that heavily on bidding solo. Maybe I'll hit it sometime, maybe not. And then these other 2 have rule books that are like in the modern Euro type style, big colors spread out, and they just, for my coffee fried brain, they didn't work. But I look at this and I say, yeah, you know what? It was a workable and accessible game initially, and it's not like it's become all that much more complicated in Wild Blue Yonder. There are a few little complexities added in, a few little twists and changes and minor modifications, but they made the rulebook worse. They made the components less useful to you, right? So for that matter, I don't know. I really don't know why so little effort was made on developing something that was as good as the originals were. And then, of course, there's GMT choosing to put the most expensive cards that they can into the game. I mean, they weren't trying to save money or anything with those heavy-duty cards, but it made the game almost unplayable. It was just too much of a pain to shuffle the decks, Whereas this, I can see it shuffles just as well as, a deck of Magic cards would or whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to do that quick look at this. That's all I'm going to cover of this, I think. I mean, it's possible someday I come back and I revisit things, but the game is essentially the same. The gameplay for the fighter duels is going to be the same. It's got the same kind of rules for the bombers, etc. Doesn't have night fighters in it, but it does have the additional rules for carrier coverage. And we could take a quick peek. How easy is that to understand? Because I had real trouble with the way the campaigns were discussed in the other. At the beginning of each turn, each player records his carrier fleet tactics. Possible tactics: close range, medium range, long range. You cannot choose close if you were long last turn. This affects recovery of damaged aircraft. And non-carrier, that's just going to be a card flip to see what you get. Non-carrier fleets are assumed to have chosen the same fleet tactics as the carrier fleet. Flight ops: at the beginning of each turn, each player records his flight ops for the turn. This could be a large strike, small strike, or no strike. You can't choose large strike 2 consecutive turns. This determines the amount of cap you have over your plane, over your ships. Okay. After you reveal your resources, you resolve a strike. They're going to be 2 target bound, 1 homebound turn. So far it makes sense, right? Like, I was struggling, and this is completely new stuff. The base number of aircraft for a strike is listed on the campaign sheet, not the log. So here we have a large strike. Here's what goes with it. That's the cap you get out of it. Yeah. You know, it feels like they describe things in a way that gets you to what you want to see. You know, what to being able to play the game right away. And my feeling with Wild Blue Yonder is it really wasn't very accessible unless you had played the earlier games. I had played 8th Air Force, but I hadn't figured out the campaigns from it. My buddy had done that for us because he's the one who bought it. And, you know, I remember him struggling a little bit with them, but, and so I don't know if the stuff that went into Wild Blue Yonder was as problematic in 8th Air Force. But here, it feels much more accessible for what are actually, I think, more complex rules for things like these naval campaigns. Sure, the rules are in here as well, or a lot of the extra stuff is here. But yeah, it looks kind of cool. I especially like the idea of the naval campaigns where I don't know if you know where the enemy is. Like the whole cool thing about like Midway was the searching. Is that handled here at all? Secretly select resources, conduct strikes. It looks to me we got scout missions too, though. After choosing and revealing resources, if you do not choose no strikes, you resolve a strike. In addition to other strikes and missions resolved, determine the command. All strikes have a duration, the base number. Yeah, it looks to me like you find the enemy. I don't see anything that... let's look at strikes. Yeah, that's just like the normal bombing missions, honestly. Yeah, I don't see anything that seems to indicate that you have to find the enemy anywhere. Oh, that's resources. It looks like you know where the enemy is. So what is the scout mission? What's up with that? That's a resource. May not be selected if you choose no strike as your flight ops. Conduct a scout mission before you conduct your carrier fleet strikes. All aircraft start at low. I honestly think that that looks like the mission lasts 4 turns or until all aircraft. You received extra aircraft for your strike based on how many turns your scout aircraft survives. Yeah, okay. So you're trying to get your scout aircraft to find the enemy, and you get more bombers or more planes if you succeed with your scouting. Honestly, what I would have liked to have seen for that is that you would be scouting to find the enemy at all, because that's a big part of what Midway was about, was searching. You know, it was the idea of being able to catch the carrier off guard. Doesn't cover that, and it's kind of similar to looking at, you know, what I feel like what's missing from the pilots is that I'd want those pilots to be a general resource I have available. And if we look here, I don't have pilots present no matter what. What happens is you flip pilots, you know, and see if you've got a good pilot in that particular, in your mission. And that, again, just doesn't, it doesn't reflect what I'd want the campaign to kind of show. I'd want to be able to use the pilots as a resource that I can use on various flights, and then if he gets shot down, well, that's a problem. I've lost that resource. And if I'd also kind of like an experience system, you know, like I'm used to in my World War I games. Of course, at Midway, that probably doesn't make sense. There's not enough time, but there would be like time for the same pilot to make multiple flights over the course of the Midway campaign. Anyway, that's a quick look at this. It's all I'm going to do. And again, I'll probably label this as an unboxing on BGG, because that's really all it is. It's a look at the components, but with a focus on the rules as to how much clearer they are and how much better they managed the components in terms of delivering the information that you need to play the game. Had Wild Blue Yonder been this well developed, I would have been able to play the Stalingrad campaign right when I tried to, instead of having to come back to it, you know, a week later and saying, yeah, screw it, man. All right, let's send this up.